A commitment to gifted education is critical for nurturing young people who can make path-breaking discoveries and creative contributions to society. The first step is to train teachers and others to spot talent, which may show up in a child's IQ score, but could also surface as aptitudes in specific areas such as number sense or musical ability. Psychosocial skills that can be developed through training, such as persistence, strategic risk-taking, and self-regulation, also contribute to later success. Offering young children a wide range of activities could spawn new interests and enable a greater diversity of talents to surface. However, not all methods of spotting and nurturing talent are effective. And it is not clear that parents can supercharge their baby to boost his or her long-term abilities. At least that is what David Barner says. And he should know, he tried to supercharge his daughter. Barner is an expert in the development of math education for children. He knows that math learning is important for cognition and for life skills, so he wanted his 2-year-old daughter to be a math whiz. He was never great at math himself. Both he and his wife preferred reading, but he saw its value. So for months, he spent time each day quizzing his child using flashcards and videos, games and comic books to teach math to toddlers and preschoolers. In the end, although he delighted in watching a young mind absorb math in real time, that is pretty much all he got, while his daughter developed a distaste for math. Her true passion and skill? Reading, of course. Speaking with his professional hat on, Barner thinks that parents have less impact on their kids than things like who your friends are, what school you go to, whether you have access to good resources. Many analyses, such as an ongoing University of Minnesota study with separated twins, also show that personality and proclivities are surprisingly heritable. Once an exceptional aptitude emerges, we need programs to be in place, including accelerated classes and psychological coaching, that can nurture its development as early and as vigorously as possible. The chief goal of these efforts is preparing young people for outstanding achievement. For nearly a century, scholars have sought to understand, measure, and explain giftedness. To some, the term is a misnomer for the result of endless practice or social advantage. However, extraordinary abilities do exist and do matter. Giftedness implies an ability to perform at the extreme upper end of the distribution in any certain area. Early on, it is determined and largely defined by potential, followed by demonstrated achievements, and later by creative productivity or eminence. In elementary schools, it is often equated with IQ. Students who score above the 95th percentile on an intelligence test are often classified as gifted. IQ is generally predictive of achievement in school, but new research shows that narrower, subject-specific academic assessments can help forecast the likelihood of adult contributions to, say, literature or physics. In 2005, psychologist David Lubinsky of Vanderbilt University and his colleagues reported that scores on the math and verbal parts of the SAT measured at around age 13 in high-achieving students, as well as tests of student interests, can indicate whether an adolescent will choose to later pursue the humanities or a math or science field as a career. Even differences within the 99th percentile of scores for mathematical ability, the top 1%, are associated with variations in outcomes, such as a student's eventual income level, the number of patents and other creative accomplishments, and the likelihood of obtaining a doctorate. This longitudinal work is ongoing and has been replicated at Duke University. In recent years, educators have begun to look beyond IQ scores to measure giftedness. Specialized schools or programs for science or the arts admit students based on achievement test scores, essays, and projects. Elementary school programs may ask teachers to complete checklists that reveal a student's commitment to learning. As we discover how to better identify the core abilities associated with each domain of knowledge and skill, the field will move from relying primarily on current performance to using measures of potential, including psychosocial skills, as students get older. To achieve greatness in any realm requires more than talent. It also demands extraordinary creativity, self-regulation, and social skills. Creativity, the ability to come up with novel, useful, and elegant ideas or ways of doing things, has a long historical association with giftedness. It may depend on relevant skills and knowledge, but at its essence are mental processes such as metaphorical thinking, tolerance for complexity, and flexibility in problem solving. Precursors of adult creativity may include independent thinking, a willingness to entertain different perspectives and views, and the creation of projects and products that are novel when compared with those of one's peers. In 1999, educational psychologist Jonathan Plucker, now at Johns Hopkins University, reported results from a multi-decade follow-up of students who were identified as creative with the Torrance tests of creative thinking while they were in elementary school. Scores on this test, which largely measures divergent thinking, were 3 times better than IQ tests at predicting the quantity and quality of publicly recognized creative accomplishments in adulthood. Divergent thinking may be defined as an outside-the-box approach that generates unusual or creative alternatives to persistent challenges. In laboratory studies, DT is measured with tasks that require individuals to complete picture fragments with novel drawings or to generate alternative uses for common objects. For instance, turning a paperclip into a fishing hook or an earring. Although pondering different uses for a paperclip may seem somewhat frivolous on the surface, longitudinal studies of DT suggest that children's scores on these sorts of tasks predict their personal and professional creative achievements as adults. Thus, the ability to think divergently may be established early in life and may influence people's capacity for making meaningful, influential contributions at home or work. Aside from their ability and creativity, gifted individuals stand out in the commitment and sacrifice they are willing to make in pursuit of their goals. As psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi wrote, the unifying similarity among geniuses and innovators is not cognitive or affective, but motivational. What is common among them is the unwillingness or inability to strive for goals everyone else accepts. Giftedness has long been associated with high levels of intrinsic motivation, that is, engaging in a task for the sake of learning. In fact, many high academic achievers are also motivated by and enjoy extrinsic factors such as trophies, scholarships, and other forms of recognition. In a 2010 study, school psychologist David J. Cover, then at the San Francisco Unified School District, and Frank C. Worrell showed that a group of academically talented students had similar levels of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. High achievers may hunger more than others, not only for knowledge, but also for fame, fortune, or the power to change the world. In 1978, Joseph Renzulli introduced the idea that one of the most distinguishing features of high achievers is their task persistence and motivation. In other words, they are willing to engage in study and practice that, though not necessarily enjoyable, is instrumental to improvement. In a 2008 study, psychologist Timothy W. Kirby, now at George Mason University, and his colleagues, demonstrated that the kindergarten pupils most likely to be identified as gifted in 3rd grade exhibited not only high cognitive ability, but also early task orientation, which is the ability to do and complete work even in an environment in which teachers may not be directly supervising the work or when there are distractions present. Passion contributes to the development of great ideas and performances, although it has rarely been studied in the context of gifted education. In one exception, psychologist Jennifer A. Fredericks, then at Connecticut College, and her colleagues, examined the quality in a 2010 study of 66 high school and college students who had been identified as gifted in academics, sports, or the arts in childhood. The athletes and artists readily expressed passion about their involvement, telling experimenters, for instance, "I love the game. I want to play all the time." Among academically gifted youths, however, a typical statement was, "Well, I don't get all excited or anything. I mean, it's schoolwork." The study suggested that the way academics are currently taught does not instill passion, But with a greater focus on problem solving, creative thinking, and learning authentic methods of a discipline, we might better foster that passion among academically gifted students. Further, the students might have displayed interest in specific subjects if the survey had been structured that way. A key to developing intellectual talent may lie in giving students lots of opportunities to pursue their interests. In a 2010 study, Jonathan Y., then at Duke, and his colleagues assessed participation in various educational opportunities such as academic competitions, research apprenticeships, academic clubs, summer programs, and accelerated classes among 1,467 individuals who had been identified as talented in math at age 13. They found that those who had been involved in more of these activities and classes, which is what the authors called a larger educational dose, had at age 33 a higher rate of notable accomplishments in science, technology, or math, such as earning a PhD, obtaining patents, or securing tenure. Effective talent development requires different kinds of teachers at different stages. Mentorship is vital for transforming ability into renown. In a study of the origins of eminence through mentorship published in 1977, sociologist Harriet Zuckerman of Columbia University interviewed 92 Americans who had won a Nobel Prize in Science between 1901 and 1972. She found that more than half the interviewees had studied or collaborated with previous laureates. These mentors helped their protégés develop a feel for important problems and elegant solutions and mobilized resources, such as access to grants, fellowships, jobs, and publications on their behalf. Developing youthful talents, especially in low-income and rural communities, by extending and supplementing the regular curriculum, can expose children to new topics and ideas and enable them to engage with a subject in more depth. Summer programs, for example, may feature a range of topics that are not typically available in the regular classroom, such as human anatomy for fourth graders or robotics for middle schoolers. Such enrichment activities are a staple of most gifted programs in schools, but expanding them could identify new talent. Courses that introduce subjects typically not studied until high school or college, for example, may give interested and able students a head start. In some cases, students may take these courses in specialized schools for gifted students, such as the Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy and New York City's Brooklyn Technical High School or the Bronx High School of Science. The greater the diversity of offerings, the greater are our chances of unmasking potential. In 2004, the news program 60 Minutes ran a piece on low-income adolescents of color from Harlem, 4 of whom were representing the United States at the Olympics in fencing that year. How did students from low-income backgrounds living in an inner-city neighborhood get involved in such an esoteric sport? By good fortune, a black fencing champion had retired to Harlem and begun giving lessons 15 years earlier. His work provided the opportunity for many youngsters who may never have had a sword to discover that they had a talent for the sport, as well as the interest, the passion, and the commitment to pursue it. Students who seize such opportunities and demonstrate sufficient commitment should be given access to increasingly challenging classes or competitions, regardless of their age. Academic acceleration may involve skipping a grade, entering a higher grade level in a single subject, or enrolling early in advanced placement courses. It may also consist of speeding up instruction in a course so that 2 years of material are covered in 1 year. Acceleration significantly boosts both achievement and motivation in gifted students. Several meta-analyses reported in 2004 by psychologist James A. Kulik found that accelerated elementary and secondary students demonstrated levels of achievement superior to mainstreamed gifted students of the same age and ability. Kulik also found that accelerated students were more likely to seek degrees beyond a bachelor's. Researchers Tsai-Ying Steenberg and Hu, Matthew C. Makel, and Paula Olszewski-Kubilius conducted a meta-analysis of the effects of acceleration based on 6 previous meta-analyses. Results showed that the accelerated students significantly outperformed their non-accelerated same-age peers to at least a moderate degree, although their performance was not significantly greater than that of the non-accelerated older peers. When different forms of acceleration were studied separately, such as grade skipping or compressing curriculum into shorter periods, results were similar, with positive, moderate, and statistically significant impact of acceleration on students' academic achievement. Schools hardly ever use acceleration strategies, yet acceleration should be a key part of gifted education. Indeed, we can expect children with talent to increasingly channel their efforts into specific areas as they mature. They may be able to do so by buying time for enrichment, apprenticeships, and other exploratory programs through showing early mastery of content. Students benefit from schools staffed with extremely knowledgeable teachers, even at the earliest grades. And we need more affordable summer programs that compress semester-long or year-long courses into a few weeks of intensive instruction. Providing opportunities is not enough, however. Talented individuals must take advantage of them. Research shows that young people may shy away from educational or extracurricular offerings for various reasons, including fear of competition or failure, poor study and organizational skills, and shyness. Capitalizing on favorable circumstances thus requires certain psychological strengths, among them an ability to cope with challenges and criticism and a willingness to take strategic risks. Such traits, along with persistence, focus, and drive, also support the ability to undergo the intense practice and preparation necessary to reach the top. In a 2001 study, sports psychologist Daniel Gould of Michigan State University and his colleagues investigated the development of psychological strength in U.S. Olympic champions. Becoming a champion requires more than just athletic prowess. It also depends on an ability to focus, mental toughness, facility with setting goals, competitiveness, confidence, coachability, drive, optimism, and emotional control. Coaches routinely teach elite athletes how to handle setbacks, adjust anxiety levels for optimal performance, and imagine success. In recent years, music conservatories have given more systemic attention to these skills. The Juilliard School's pre-college and conservatory programs implicitly inculcate values, such as deep devotion to one's art and teachers, that are associated with successful negotiation of the conservatory years. The school has also offered courses on mental skills training to directly address variations in outcome from music star to underachiever. Academically talented students can experience competitive and occasionally stressful environments. Although these individuals often display extraordinary motivation and commitment, they rarely receive additional psychological coaching to deal with the rigors of acceleration, peer comparisons, and other challenges. Schools and college teachers receive no systematic training in this realm. Neither are they typically trained to boost creativity through exercises that invigorate metaphorical and divergent thinking or problem solving. Schools could do more to encourage high academic achievement too. Although teachers and administrators often publicly recognize accomplishments in athletics, leadership, and the performing arts, they tend to ignore or downplay academic feats. Stereotyping kids with intellectual talents as nerds or brainiacs betrays a lack of support for these children, many of whom work very hard to meet their goals. It may also send a message to other students that high achievement is not worthy of teacher attention or recognition. Indeed, the idea that gifted children are naturals and do not need to study or practice can severely undercut motivation. According to research by psychologist Carol S. Dweck of Stanford University, the assumption that intelligence and talent are fixed traits can lead people to focus primarily on proving themselves worthy of their gifted or smart label and to undervalue the role of effort in achievement. In contrast, believing that intelligence and talent are malleable can motivate a person to put in the daunting amount of effort necessary to achieve goals such as becoming a respected physicist, historian, or philosopher. Dweck's research suggests that this attitude can be fostered with proper instruction and parenting practices. The world needs more people who can develop extraordinary skills and insights. When children are given the means to transform talent into transcendent achievement, they experience great personal satisfaction and at the same time can deliver benefits to society that we can't even predict. 5 common myths about the brain. Some widely held ideas about the way children learn can lead educators and parents to adopt faulty teaching principles. Myth: humans use only 10% of their brain. Fact: the 10% myth, which is sometimes elevated to 20%, is mere urban legend. It's one perpetuated by the plot of the 2011 movie Limitless, which pivoted around a wonder drug that endowed the protagonist with prodigious memory and analytical powers. In the classroom, teachers may entreat students to try harder, but doing so will not light up unused neural circuits. Academic achievement does not improve by simply turning up a neural volume switch. Myth: left brain and right brain people differ. Fact: the contention that we have a rational left brain and an intuitive, artistic right side is fable. Humans use both hemispheres of the brain for all cognitive functions. The left brain, right brain notion originated from the realization that many, though not all, people process language more in the left hemisphere, and spatial abilities and emotional expression tend to be more in the right. Psychologists have used the idea to explain distinctions between different personality types. And in education, programs emerged that advocated less reliance on rational left brain activities. Brain imaging studies show no evidence of the right hemisphere as a locus of creativity, and the brain recruits both left and right sides for both reading and math. Myth: you must speak one language before learning another. Fact: children who learn English at the same time as they learn French do not confuse one language with the other and develop more slowly. This idea of interfering languages suggests that different areas of the brain compete for resources. But in reality, young children who learn 2 languages, even at the same time, gain a better generalized knowledge of language structure as a whole. Myth: brains of males and females differ in ways that dictate learning abilities. Fact: there are no meaningful distinction between boys' and girls' brains or intelligence. No research has demonstrated gender differences in how networks of neurons become connected when we learn new skills. Any structural differences are small and based on averages. In other words, they're not relevant to any given child or adult. Myth: each child has a particular learning style. Fact: the notion that a student tends to learn better by favoring a particular form of sensory input, a visual learner as opposed to one who listens better, has not received much validation in actual studies. For this and other myths, public perceptions appear to have outstripped the science. Uta Frith, a neuroscientist who chaired a British panel that looked at the promise of neuroeducation, urges parents and educators to tread cautiously. There is huge demand by the general public to have information about neuroscience for education. As a consequence, there's an enormous supply of totally untested, untried, and not very scientific methods. So as you see, we're still learning a lot about learning.